Hello, everyone. Welcome to another interview here on TejanoKeyboard.com. I am that guy. I'm Rolando Revilla. And today we have, once again, Mr. Mario Ortiz. Mario, how are you doing today?
What is up, my brother? How's everybody doing today? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing good, man. Just here. Excited about today's interview. I've never done this, man. So,
Me neither, man.
uh, you,
I'm
usually I'm
always,
on the other side, man, but
yeah.
it's gonna be fun.
So to let you guys know a little bit about how this came about. Well, here I'll let you kind of preface this whole thing before we get started.
So, I mean, yeah, how did this come about? So, I was very I love the fact, man, that you're doing this. First of all, I think we've talked about this before, and I really appreciate what you're doing, man.
Thank you.
And yeah, brother, I think it's awesome, man, that you're giving time and letting people know that there's still some keyboard players out there, man. Um, yeah, it's sometimes it's like that needle in the haystack, man. There aren't too many of us out there, man. So um, for you just to kind of introduce the world to all these keyboard players that people aren't familiar with, or they just really don't know that we exist, man. You know, especially with our genre, right?
Mm.
Um, a lot of your typical average fan, it's usually the accordion player or the guitar player and the drummer that gets the
The
praise,
lead
but
singer.
um, and the lead singer, of course. But yeah, we're out here, man. So I was telling Rolando, and I'm talking to all the fans out there. I think I told him, I said, man, you know what, dude? I think it'd be cool if we interview you, man, because people want to know about you, man. I know you've been asking questions to all these keyboard players and just trying to get, you know, just trying to make us not famous, but just
Support each
people.
other, kind of like share our stories,
Exactly.
and so in reply to Mario, initially I was like, "No, man, nobody wants to know about me." And then I kind of started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I think this would be a good platform, and so that's why I'm saying the first ever because we're gonna see how this goes, and if this goes good, then maybe we can continue to do this with other artists. So I think this time around, it'll Mario will have probably more questions kind of directed towards me, but along the way, as we're having this conversation, we want to engage you guys that are watching and gals,
Yes.
that are watching. As a matter of fact, I say gals because I just connected with this band I saw on Facebook Live. I think they were called like Texas.
From Dallas, right? The kids.
Yeah.
Texas
And
Beats.
Kelly
Yeah.
plays keyboards, and she was killing it. So I was like, I gotta have her on the show. So, uh, yeah, that's for another whatever. But what I'm thinking
Awesome.
here is that what we want to do is sometimes we'll spark up a conversation, and if we feel that there's a question that's that deems a response from everybody who's watching, we want to ask you guys. That way, you guys can have some input too, because that's how we grow is by having a conversation
For
about
sure.
all this. So I'm gonna try to be as hands off on this sort of thing, and I'll let you take it, Mario.
Well, cool, brother. I guess, well, let's start with the questions. What are your likes and dislikes?
I like
No,
long
I'm
walks
just
on the
kidding.
beach. I'm a
Yeah.
Sagittarius, and no, man, I love music, man. That's basically all I ever done with my life. That's what I still continue to do. Outside of music, um, I like hanging out with people. I'm a social person. I like having people over, but obviously lately that hasn't been happening. So I'm kind of going stir crazy here.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I like food. I like beer. I'm really into craft beer. So one of my hobbies, it's an expensive one, but I've gone to different breweries. I've made my own beer. As a matter of
Oh
fact,
wow, man.
um, I'm having a little one right here. This one's
There you go.
it's a brown ale by I believe the brewery was called Duck Rabbit. The logo looks like a rabbit and a duck together. It's crazy, but
I like.
I've tried almost 2,000 different beers. So in my
Wow,
lifetime,
dude.
not on like one sitting or
Okay.
anything. No,
You
but
sound like some of my band members, man. You fucking stupid.
yeah, I mean, and that's another thing is that like I don't necessarily like I don't like to drink when I play. If I have a beer or two, maybe, you know what I mean? And the same thing
Right.
like with my band, like I always talk to the guys in the band and tell them, "Hey, listen, if you're going to have a drink, if that's your thing, that's fine, but always have it in a cup that's kind of incognito, inconspicuous, so people aren't not like, man, look at that
Yeah.
guy has a bunch of beer bottles on stage, or
Yeah.
it
Don't
just
advertise it.
yeah, advertising. Yeah, so I
Yes.
mean, but that's besides that. I mean, I like watching movies. Just whatever, man. I like spending time with my family, my son and my
Yeah,
wife.
brother. Amen to that. So, man, I guess let's get started with the Tejano stuff, man. Like, how did you get into Tejano music? Like, what was the first band you played with? Or how did you even get turned on to Tejano music?
Okay, so this one's gonna sound pretty stereotypical, right? So this is kind of like the long version here. So I was born in Shelby, Michigan, which is a rural town in Michigan. The population is like maybe 2,000 people. There's more cows and,
Oh
and
wow.
and farm than there is anything else. I mean, I'm country. I am country as hell. I
Wow.
don't really you know associate with that, but whatever. I'm from the sticks, and my family, my dad's family is from like the Alice area. He was born in Plainview, Texas, though, because they used to
Okay.
travel for work. My mom, her family is from Edinburgh, Texas, and they traveled too. My mom, and then they met in Michigan, and so that's where I was born. But my dad's dad was a kind of closet accordionist. He had this big like Steve Urkel accordion and used to make some noise. My abuelito Toño, and my dad liked it, and they were kind of the ones that kind of like. I mean, everybody in the family liked music, right? But none of
Right.
them really took it like seriously. They just kind of like they didn't even know keys or nothing. They just make noise with it
It
because they
went
like
for
the
it.
sound
Yeah.
of yeah, they just like the sound of the accordion. And so when I was real little, like I only remember this because I have pictures of it, but my dad would sit on the floor with his big Lawrence Welk looking accordion, and I always wanted to go after it. And so he bought me a little 2 octave piano accordion, and just kind of like how you kind of try to make your kid your twin or whatever, right? Like you want them to kind of like matching shirts or whatever. So he bought me a little accordion,
Yeah.
but man, I mean, growing up, I really did like, I didn't listen to anything but Tejano music. Like that's what was on the radio all the time. I mean, I shouldn't say that. My mom liked country music, and my dad liked like I don't know. I call it elevator music, but like Michael
Yeah.
Bolton, Aaron Neville, that kind of adult contemporary or whatever. And
Right.
but I didn't really dig that. I mean, not until I was older, I didn't dig American music as much, but like my grandpa used to call me Sombra because he said that that's all I used to talk about was La Sombra. So like I grew up on Mas and La Mafia for sure, La Sombra. Those were kind of like the big three when I was growing up. And so fast forward a little bit of time, there were some guys that knew my dad, and they were kind of like musicians. They had their they were in different bands and stuff, and they would get together, and they knew my dad had an accordion. I wouldn't say that they whatever, but then they would
Right.
call him to come and like jam with them or whatever, and we'd go to their house and or their garage or whatever. And so my dad would bring me along, and I was like, "Hey, I know that song, and hey, can you let ask them if they'll let me play or whatever, right?" And so they would let me play, and then from there, like I went to a Spanish Catholic church, So I played in church, but it was all piano accordion, and then later on, my dad saw that I took a liking to it. And my dad really didn't want to take the music seriously. I was the one that would bug him, like, hey, dad, playing with other musicians is fun. Let's start a band and this and that. And so my dad was a mechanic, and he would do extra work on the side to kind of make a little extra money with some of that money that he would do from, fixing people's cars or whatever. He'd go and buy some gear and, bought me a little keyboard. And so that's how I kind of got into keyboard. Uh, but yeah, we would cover all sorts of, like, well, at that time, let's see. I mean, a lot of Moss and Gary Hobbs and whatever, but I mean, neither of us knew anything. Like, we didn't know chords, we didn't know played everything with two fingers, like, but we played with a lot of heart cuz we loved the music, right? And it wasn't until we started like hanging out with other musicians that would say, "Hey, that's not right. This is how you play a G scale, you know what I mean? And it has this sharp." And then, um my uncle on my mom's side gifted me a saxophone. And so when I got into, middle school, I took up saxophone. And so I started learning how to read music. And then from there, like right around that time is like when, that was kind of like the golden era of Tejano music. So that's when like Jay was coming out on his own, and David Lee had his whole string of like monster albums, and so that was like I started studying a lot, like why when I play does it not sound like that, you know what I mean? And so then I would start putting little things together and try to listen more critically, not just to how they were being played, how they would play the keyboards, but all the aspects of the arrangement. Because the one thing is that where I grew up, there was a lot of people that liked Tejano music, but there wasn't a lot of people who played Tejano music. So my dad's buddies that would play, it would come from like the norteño world or the grupero world or banda, whatever, So they would come, and this music's like way more progressive that we had to kind of like coach them. And like my dad, he knew what he knew, and he sang and whatever. He's kind of the front guy of the group, but kind of like at a young age, and I'm talking about like 11, 12 years old, I'm kind of like directing the group and telling these guys, hey, este es el tono acá. And like, so then at a young age, I was having to learn how to play a little bass, a little guitar and stuff. So when I say, hey, you're doing it wrong, I had to actually explain what needed to be changed in order for it to sound correct. And some of those guys didn't really like that, because somebody who's, punk kid, a real young kid, telling them that they're doing it wrong. But I mean,
feel you on that. Oh yeah.
but
I
I
know what
mean,
that's about.
that was basically it, man. And then, like, going into high school, we used to play a lot. There was a while there in the '90s when we played like almost every weekend. And for being in Michigan and Tejano music, I mean, that was pretty good. But then towards the end there, like going into to high school, it started slowing down some. The fan base for Tejano music really wasn't that big anymore, and so things started slowing down. I went to college, and I met up with Johnny Vasquez from Tejano Sound, and that's a whole nother story in itself. But then he asked me to play keys in their band because they were in need of a keyboardist, and I was stoked because for those of you in Michigan, you guys already know what I'm talking about. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Michigan Tejano music, like Tejano Sound for me was like the dream band to be with. I mean, they had a bus, and they had a huge JBL rig and lights and moving heads and all this
Wow.
stuff. And I was just like, that's the band I want to play with. I mean, and no disrespect to like any of the other local bands. I mean, there's great musicians. We've even interviewed some of them here. But as far as the aspect of like that rock star sort of like atmosphere, like as close as I was gonna get to it at all in Michigan, that was it. And so I talked to my dad. And I'm like, hey, Johnny wants me to go and jam with them, and he was like, man, go and play with them. Like we ain't even, we had a couple more obligations. He's like, go for it. And my dad got to see me perform one time or a couple times maybe, with Tejano Sound, and then he unexpectedly passed away. But my dad was all about the music. He liked dancing and whatever, and so for his birthday, he got to go and see us play, and he was very proud of the fact that I went on beyond what the family band could do, you know, and those were
Awesome,
some
man.
good
Yeah.
times, man.
Nice, brother. So, um, how long have you been doing this, man? As far as the touring or playing, recording, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I can say that if I remember correctly, the date was April. It was in the teens. It was but of 1994. So
Okay.
I was in fourth grade, 11 years old, and I'm playing at the Vilas, and
What? Yeah.
yeah, and then I have a cousin who's a year younger than me, and like maybe a year or two into the band's history, I should say, something happened where we were in need of a drummer, right? And he was available, and he used to like just play maracas and stuff, but he could play a cumbia, he could play a ranchera and all this stuff, and he was learning how to do doubles and just kind of playing Tejano, and we would coach each other because we're like basically the same age. So we'd be playing in bars, like some bars would hire you Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for the whole weekend, and here we'd go. He was in what? Let's see, he was like in third grade, fourth grade, and I'm in fourth grade, fifth grade. And but his dad was in the band, and my dad obviously was his group, and so since '94, so let's see here, 26 years, and I count that date because that was like my first pay gig, uh,
Okay. Yeah.
and that was my first pay gig. But before that, I was playing like in church and doing the garage thing with my dad's um, band and or friends, but yeah, and then I played with the Tejano Sound for 11 years, and then I decided that it was time to just do something different. And then um, I talked to Johnny and told him, hey man, I kind of want to do my own thing, and so I started Motivo, which I forgot to talk about the shirt this week, but
Yeah.
that's my band shirt.
So
Uh,
let's talk about that. Yeah. That's your project, right? That's your band.
yep, yep. We started in 2016, 17. Hold on. 17. No, yeah, 17. No, 16. I'm sorry. 2016. And we were just a couple guys from a couple different bands that decided we wanted to get together and make some noise, man. And so we got together, and the band's been kind of chugging along here. It was kind of like the worst time to kind of start your own band.
Yeah.
The how music's kind of in decline, and but and not only that, but now that we're in this whole COVID thing, like we played one gig this year just out of obligation because we were obligated to do it, but the rest of the guys were like, hey man, we just gotta you know hang tight until all this stuff blows over. uh, you know what, I want to take a second here because I don't know if you can see it on your end, but I do want to talk to some of the guys and gals who are watching here. So how about this? As part of the reverse interview deal here, why don't we ask everybody if you guys want to put in the chat, put down what year you guys started jamming, or put down how many years, and then we can figure out the math that way. Adam Brown says, "What's up, Mario from Colorado? Thank you, Rolando, for hosting these sessions. Truly a blessing. Thank you. It means a lot to us." Jose de Paz, absolutely. I'm not sure what that was in reference to, or maybe he was just agreeing with Adam. Random blind guy, what's up? What's up? Hello, random blind guy. Nice to see you again. Um, the stare, lol. I'm not sure what that means. Uh, Emmanuel J says this is dope. Reverse interview, fire and the horns.
Yes, sir.
Chris Strunk, what's up, fellas? By the way, Chris Strunk is another guy that I need to get on here. I'm going to talk to him about maybe getting him on here in September. And this is you. Feel free to ask any questions. Rolando, I was wondering where you met my brother Ernie. Okay, so John, yeah, um, Ernie Ortiz, by the way, is a monster bass player. One of my favorites from Michigan. He's great, talented. I've heard him play keyboards and a bunch of other stuff. But so to answer John's question about how I met Ernie, uh, when I had my own band and after my dad passed away, um, I still had a couple obligations. I was still uh, performing with Tejano Sound, but Johnny knew that I had to get some of these other gigs out of the way. Well, my dad had passed away, and I needed to put a band together because the band didn't exist anymore. And one of my buddies, who's now a compadre of mine, Albert Castillo from Holland, Michigan, played with this band called Charisma, which John is their current keyboard player. And we'll talk about that, John, because John will be on the show in 2 weeks. Anyway, so uh, Ernie knew Albert Castillo, and then I told Albert, "Hey, help me get this gig done." So we went with two keyboard players, and he's like, "I know this guy who plays bass." That was Ernie, but I've met Ernie before because he played with Escorpion or the Lowriders. All these bands I'm talking about, you won't know who they are. They're all Michigan bands, but they're really super good bands, man. They really were. And they still are. The musicians are still great. So nonetheless, so I've seen Ernie before, but I didn't actually jam with Ernie until that job. And then after that, we stayed in contact. So then when Tejano Sound went through its change of bass players, I was like, "Hey man, I know this guy from Holland. His name's Ernie Ortiz," and then he became Tejano Sound's bass player. He left the group for a little while and then came back in. So he's again their bass player. Super great, very tasteful playing bass player. If you guys ever check out the Tejano Sound band TSB live, listen to Ernie, man. He kills it on the bass. He's
That's
great.
awesome.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then let's see here. Uh, Ruben Villegas says, "Is this live right now?" Hopefully that answers your question. uh, let's see here. Chris Rivera says, "What's up? Hope is all. Or what's up, fellas? Hope all is well." Ray Orona says, "What's up? Hello, Ray." Roy Moya says, "Started jamming in 1946. Wow, that's awesome, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't even thought of. My dad wasn't even thought of back then.
Yeah.
But kudos to you. I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying like I'm glad that you're still doing it, man. That's good. Let's see. Random blind guy says started jamming in the early 2000s. I'm still jamming this day, or to this day, but kind of only on YouTube. I'm still not famous yet. LOL. None of us are.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, except for you, man. I'm glad that you
Oh,
listen. I'm glad that you decided to do this because out of all the keyboard players, I'm writing on your coattails here, man. People, if you know, if somebody else would have interviewed me, I don't think we would have had as many people. So thank you for allowing me to share
oh,
my
no,
story to
bro.
everybody else on your coattails. So okay. Anyways, let's see.
Crazy, bro.
Have y'all heard of Isaiah Birch Lago? Hopefully, I'm spelling that right. He's from Michigan. Oh, Isaiah Bruciaga. Yeah, yeah, another great musician, great drummer, singer, and has his own band. Um, Chris Strunk says picked up drums at 4 years old and has been playing live for 20 years this year. Awesome, Chris. Chris and I are about the same age, so that's cool, man. Uh, Jesse Alvarez says, "Fun question. Hey Mario, uh, if you had a fantasy Tejano band, which players would you get on the lineup?" We'll answer that here in a second. Let's catch a
Yeah.
couple. Yeah. Oh, sir. So John put Ernie Ortiz jammed one with Mario. Saw it on YouTube. I'll get to that story here in a second, Mario, because that involves you. Let's see.
Okay.
What's up? Hope all has been good. Saludos from San Benito. Joe De Paz says, or Jose De Paz, excuse me, says, started at 7 years, didn't fully get into music until 2008, and have been playing music for 12 years now. Okay, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys are answering some of these questions, so we're not just talking by ourselves. Because eventually, I'm going to run out of things to talk about. Not really. I'm long winded. If you let me talk, I won't shut up.
That's what the show's about, man.
I'm just keeping it real. I just
Yeah, yeah.
If you ever see my Facebook posts, Bianca always, my wife Bianca says, "Hey, you're responding to whatever." Yeah, she goes, "What are you writing a novel?" Like, be quiet. Okay. So, anyways, Ernie Ortiz, that bass player I was talking about, went with Tejano Sound, and he wasn't actually in the band at the time, but they did a fanfare performance, and the bass player in that band at the time couldn't make the trip. So Ernie went with us, and he was just kind of like hanging out with me and like whatever we were doing. And we went to your first ever jam session over there at that one club with the stage in the corner. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, Club Movida.
There you go, Club Movida, and you had like your road set up and all this stuff. And Ernie's like a bad bass player. He really is, but he's super shy. He was all like, "Hey man, think they'll let me play a song?" I'm like, "Just go up there, man." And I think he played like "Que Metida de Pata" or something. He played it on the bass, but it's on YouTube somewhere. So
Okay.
I think I might have even uploaded the video. I don't remember, but it's on YouTube. So yeah, John, you're absolutely right. He did jam with Mario once or twice in one set.
Yeah. That's been a minute though, man. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Wow.
and you know what?
Very
Like
cool.
we all have these stories, man. Like even like I got to jam with you a couple times. We did we were part of the Bob Gallarza group that did the
Right?
George Marroquin thing, and
Yeah.
dude, that was a funny story too. Afterwards, you're playing keys and I'm playing accordion, and you turned to me because I was like standing right next to you, and you're like, "Hey, what are you doing after this?" And I'm like trying to like not mess up because like all these guys are heavy cats. I was just there as like a, I don't know, like a participation sort of like, well, this is my friend and he's gonna play accordion. We're gonna just put him right here, right? And you're like, "Hey, what are you doing after this?" I was like, "I don't know. I was gonna go check out Ram and then come back and see you guys with Jay." He goes, "Stay right here." He goes, "I need an accordion player tonight." Like, what? Man, no practice, no nothing. I was just like, it. So I ended up doing a set with Jay there at
Yeah.
accordion. That
I
was
remember that. That was awesome, man. And kudos to you, brother. You just came in and just like if you were part of the band, man, just gelled right there, dude. It was awesome, man.
I tried, and accordion's not really my thing, man. Like I took up diatonic accordion after high school. Like I saved up my own money, and like as a kid, I always had like, because I would see people on TV like Johnny Canales or whatever, and I would see that they had the button accordion, the three
Yeah.
row button accordion. I'm like, I want a red three row button accordion. I didn't know how to play it, but I always wanted one. I always played the piano accordion, and
Yeah.
and so finally I saved up enough cash to like buy me one, and I was like, okay, now what? And so I took a complete like keyboard player's approach to playing diatonic accordion, which was okay. I'm gonna figure it out on the keyboard and then hunt for the notes on the
Yeah.
box, and so I would play it, but it didn't sound right. Like I still like I'm like this sounds like I'm playing a regular piano accordion, right? But it wasn't until, like I said, I was hanging around Johnny Vasquez at that time from Tejano Sound. And he's a great accordionist, man. Like, one of, at least in the Midwest, probably one of the most recognized accordionists. At any rate, I would, when I was in college, in between classes or whatever, I would go and hang out with him when we weren't on the road. And I would just watch him play, and I would ask him questions like, "Hey, what are you doing there? And how are you doing this?" And like, I started seeing a lot of like the feel of how you
Right.
play diatonic accordion, right? Like the
Yeah.
whole style. So then I started developing. I was trying to mock him a lot of the times when I played, but now because I did the reverse of what I was doing initially, is that by watching how you do stuff on the diatonic accordion, I transfer that over to piano accordion because so like for example, I have a bunch of like Honer Corona 2s. So they all sound Tejano, right? But if you're trying to do something norteño, you need like the full size with like the five switch sort of like to get that
Right.
sound, right? So instead of purchasing, because I'm not an accordionist per se, I own some accordions, but to have to purchase FBE, GCF, EAD, ADG, whatever in the full size, I was like, nah, man, I don't even.
Yeah.
My budget doesn't allow for that. So what I did instead is I purchased a Dino Buffetti 5 switch piano. So it has the
Oh,
norteño sound, but and I got Johnny tunes accordions and stuff, so he tuned the Buffetti to sound. Well, actually, Eddie Preciado tuned that one. Sorry, doesn't matter. One, my Honors are tuned to sound Tejano, and the Buffetti's tuned to sound more norteño. But now, like I said, like some of the inflections and stuff that you do from the button side, now I transfer that over to the piano side.
yeah.
So in a pinch, if I need to record something or perform something that has that fat master sound, that intocable sort of, whatever,
Right.
then I can just pick it up and it's still like to the ear it sounds pretty close, you know what I mean? As
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah.
before it still sounded like a keyboard player trying to play, accordion.
Yeah.
But
Like me.
you know what? Did you do some of the accordion stuff on like the new J stuff?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, you see, to
And
me
the
it
reason,
sounded pretty good, man.
well, thank you, bro. And honestly, man, that was my first time trying to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes when you're producing a track, some of these guys, man, they can't play what you're producing, right? As far as the guides.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm having to either spoon feed the player, the licks or the notes, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
very time consuming, man. And there's times where you kind of half-ass it a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, man, I can't do that. That's not me.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta give it 110%.
Yeah.
So I went on Craigslist, man, and I found a piano key accordion.
Mm-hmm.
I said, man, well, let me check it out, man. The dude wanted like $100 for it. I said, well, let me see what it sounds like, man. So I got it, and it was one of those big old Steve Urkel. It's right here, too, man. It's over here. It's a heavy sucker, man.
Yeah.
So, but I played it, and it sounds like what you said, like that Gabanelli, Intocable,
Yeah.
Norteño-ish,
Yep.
So I said, man, okay, I'll take it. So I wound up taking it to this dude to tune it,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, man, would you ever consider selling it? I said, well, I barely got it, bro. I mean, let me mess with it first, and I'll let you know what's up. So he tuned it, and he's like, man, I did the research on this, and if you keep up with the maintenance and keep it clean like this thing's worth about $8,000, dude. I was like, what? I was like, all right, well then, let me go home and mess with it, and I'll get back to you. But so yeah, I started practicing, man. And it's not an easy instrument, man, because easy instrument to play because of the fact, like what you said about the feel.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have that feel like a true accordionist, man, it's not going to sound the same. So I had to really sit down and kind of study some stuff on YouTube and figure out the little trills and the little ghost notes and stuff like that. But for the most part, the stuff that I did was more of the norteño vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I did use I think when Mario Vigil was still alive, he was part of some of these records that we did. So I used him a lot to cover more of the Tejano stuff, and of course, the typical Frankie Caballero, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I used Carlos Alvarez on some stuff too. But yeah, I was there with Mariano Herrera from Corpus. He's the engineer there at Freddie Records, and I had asked him. I said, "Man, what do you think, bro? Like, I'm trying to do these tracks, but these guys just can't play." He's like, "Well, just do it yourself, bro. You can do it, man. I already know it." So he was actually the one that gave me the confidence. I said, "Man, because I took I had a smaller accordion with piano keys, and I took that to the studio, and I was just messing with it one day. He's like, dude, you should just do it yourself." Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I already called this guy, and he's going to come over here. So, we bring this guy to track, and kind of just look at each other like, man, I don't know, man, this ain't going to work.
Yeah.
So yeah, he gave me the confidence, man, and I said, man, all right, let me try, bro. I mean, it took a couple of takes, man, but again, I already knew what I wanted. You know,
Yep.
now it's just a matter of the feel.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was able to knock it out, man, and I mean, I'm not gonna say I did it in one take, but there was some songs where it was good,
Mm-hmm.
so I was able to keep that and of course stack the sax on top, so it kind of helped, blend and give it that fat sound. But yeah, man,
And I think speaking from a little bit of experience, I don't have the experience that you or Gilbert or Bob or any of these producers have, right? But I think that's the one hang up as a producer is that, especially if you're creating content for yourself or for your main group, right? Uh, you have a vision in your head, and it's sometimes not necessarily the fact that the musicians can't cut it, right? It's just that sometimes it's hard to convey the
yeah,
the what you hear in your head, you know what I mean? Like you
yes,
can only give people so many examples until you're like, well, none of those are exactly what I'm looking for, so sometimes you just have to do it yourself. And that's not to say that that somebody else can't do it the right way, but it's just sometimes if you have that vision in your head and you know what you want, why waste your time having somebody else do what you're already gonna, you know,
yeah, exactly, bro. Yeah,
I've,
that's why I think we have everybody's got their cliques, man. There's over here in Texas, there's the San Antonio clique, there's
mhm,
the Austin clique, there's the Corpus, there's the Valley. So I think because we're all in our little cliques, after so many years, man, on the road or in the studio, you kind of just you know how to read each other.
mhm,
So that's why, like on some of these records, if y'all are checking out the credits, we're always using the same guys. Gilbert, Chente, Val, Bobby on bass, Eddie Perez. It's because we already know. Like now, it's a lot easier when these guys are set up at home, where I can just here, man. Here's the file. Do
mhm,
your thing. You already know what I want. The guide is there.
mhm.
Copy the guide, but
Put a little bit of you in
put
there. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm,
And of course, if they have questions, they'll call. But most of the time, man, they'll just it's fire, bro. Like they already know.
mhm,
So yeah, but for the guys that are like real green to recording or being creative in the studio, man, it's real hard for them to emulate what you want, because it's
mhm,
like you say, man, it's hard for them to understand what you're thinking as far as being a producer, right? So,
mhm.
well, what do you want me to play, man? And then you're there spoon feeding everything, man, and it just takes up so much time, bro. So you just wind up having to do it yourself.
So I have to share a story with you. So you had just stopped being the full time keyboard guy over there at Velasquez, and I had talked to Gilbert. And I was like, hey man, let me give this a shot, right? So I moved down to San Antonio, and I was like, I want to do this, and I don't think I was mentally prepared for for what was about to come my way.
Yeah,
And Gilbert, if you're watching this, this is no way disrespecting you, but the Gilbert train is just kind of like that train just comes at you, and if you're not ready for it, you're just like,
yeah,
what just happened? You know what I mean?
yeah,
And but I felt exactly like how you're describing it. Is that I was green. I wanted to be there to, and here's the thing. Out of the whole time that I was down there with Gilbert, I did maybe one keyboard track, and I don't think it ever saw the light of day. And I ended up doing accordion. I did a lot of accordion for him. Well,
okay,
I shouldn't say a lot. Probably like a handful of tracks. Maybe a couple of those made it or whatever, right? But my name's on some albums there with your name
there you
and
go.
Gilbert and Chente, and I'm like, yay, you know what I mean? But so I have proof that I did it for a little bit, but no, it ended up being where Gilbert was like, okay, show me what you got for this song. So I would play something. He's like, no, 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 don't do that. Do it like
Yeah,
this. And so now I'm like stuck in my mind where it's just like, okay, well, I had this whole thing already worked out, but it wasn't what he was looking for.
Yeah.
So then he ended up having to spoon feed me each lick, and you know, it's I think it came out okay. I did kind of have some criticisms about it that I wish that I would have been able to put a little bit more me into the track, because and this is nothing that Gilbert did wrong. This was on me, right? But my accordion lick sounded like guitar licks. It sounded like stuff because he would pick up the guitar, play this, do 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 do. So I would try to play it because I didn't want to like go outside of that and him be like, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
that's you're doing too much or whatever, right? So I
Right.
would play it like he was showing me, but maybe if I would have had enough confidence or whatever to play not only what he was playing, but be able to have a little bit more inflection of an accordion player, then maybe those tracks might have sounded I don't know, a little better. Everybody's always critical of themselves, right? Like no
Yeah.
matter what you put out, you're always like, hey, this could have been a little bit better or a little bit tighter here, or
Right.
whatever,
Right.
right? But
Always, man. Always.
yeah. How about that? That's a good question to ask anybody else. For those of you who are actually out there and like recording, it doesn't matter if it's recording other people or recording on other people's tracks or just recording for yourself at home. Do you guys kind of feel that whole, what's the word I'm looking for? There's like a little phrase. It's like, do you guys feel shy when it comes to the red light, the recording light? Because I know some cats that when they play live, you know what I mean. Like playing live is a different thing. Everybody's a little bit looser. If something's a little not as tight as it is in the studio, it slides by. It it happened once in the infinite amount of time that they're in space. It's just like whatever. I hit this note a little flat when I'm singing or whatever, right? But when you're recording, it has to be perfect. So for those of you who are out there, do you guys get shy or scared or whatever when that record light comes on? Um, I guess I'll start off by answering that question myself, right? Uh, it seemed like when I first started recording, uh, I would take as many takes as it would need, and then I would get more comfortable over time. But that was when I was working on my own stuff because there was nobody that was kind of breathing down my neck to say, "Hey, you're doing
Right.
this wrong," or somebody to be critical of what Like I'm already critical enough on my own to be like, "No, that's not right. That's not right. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again." Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But when there's somebody else, especially somebody that you look up to, you know what I mean, a producer that's like somebody like Gilbert, and they're like, "No, that's wrong." It stings differently. It hits you differently when
Yeah.
somebody else is telling you, "No, man, that's not right." And sometimes it, not that it's impolite, right, but it just comes across kind of brash sometimes. And I think over time, just having to learn how to grow a tougher skin to be able to take criticism, that way. But yeah, I think I'm a little better at it now. I don't really get as nervous or whatever. I mean, if I have to take multiple takes, I take multiple takes, whatever. But
Right.
it's not nearly as bad as it was when I went to San Antonio and I was trying to do it. That was a whole different. Yeah.
I feel you, bro. And like, as far as me, man, like, I was very, I was the shy guy.
Mm.
I was very intimidated too when I would have to work with others, I guess, right? When you're working with another producer and you're kind of just following his lead. Um, you know, people would tell me, man, no, just do your thing, man. We love the way you play. Da, 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 da. I said, okay. But of course, in time and hanging around great musicians and just being able to experience just the people being so creative in the studio and all that you absorb, man, and in time you learn and you start to build your confidence, man. So like there would be times too, like recently, man, where if I were to go into a session with let's say with a whole band, right? They're recording a whole band. For instance, like a project with Bob.
Mm-hmm.
When we record with Bob,
There's no click tracks.
there's no click tracks. Yeah, man. So before I started helping him arrange and kind of put the rhythm together on some of the music, before I would just go in as just the keyboard player, and he would have the charts ready, and you just go in and you read the music and all that. And that's where I would be like, oh, dude, I don't know if I can do this, and you just start to tense up, and you don't feel confident, man. But then you start to think about it. It's like, well, they called you here for a reason, obviously, because you can play and you can do this. So, it's like this movie I was watching the other day, man. I don't know if you've seen that movie about this track team from. It's called McFarlane USA. I
I've
don't know
heard
if
of
you've
it,
ever
but
seen it, man.
it's a Disney movie, right? I haven't.
I think so, man. You need to check it out. It's with Kevin Costner, man. So he says
Yeah.
to the team, because they're trying to qualify for the state championship or whatever, and they have to do cross country over this huge mountain, man. And there's this one kid that he's just so freaked out about the mountain, and the coach tells him, "Look, man, everybody is scared too, bro. Like they're all gonna go through the pain, through the sweat. You're not the only one. So you just got to think that, look, man, we're all here doing the same thing." So that's kind of like the same vibe I brought to the table, man. It's I'm here because obviously I can play, and I can make some good music here, man. So I'm with good players, and I know what I'm doing. I know how to read music. So you start to build that confidence, and you get more comfortable in the studio, man. And I think that's what led to these guys calling me to help produce and help arrange and help write charts and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now, don't get me wrong, man. I still get shy, and I still get intimidated when people call me for sessions or whatever, because
You don't know what to
it's just,
expect. You don't know what.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, man.
Hmm.
So when they take you out of your element, because me, like, I'm more that dude that's just here by himself creating.
Hmm.
I don't have a whole band, a whole team helping me out. I'm usually here in this room by myself, and then I'll start bringing in musicians to track and the vocalists and da 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 da. Versus having the whole team and the whole squad giving their input, and just looking at you like, well, did you mess up? Well, no, did you mess up? And it's just it's a different vibe, man. When you're under pressure like that, and people are looking at you, and they
It's
expect you to kill it. So go ahead.
no, I was gonna say it's just a different experience. Creating music today. When there's a producer today, even like in pop music, there's one guy who's kind of trying to put all these ideas together and then trying to create something that sounds cohesive. You know what I mean? But the old
Yeah,
school way, it's like you said, everybody's got input or whatever. Even in the days of like you know, uh, what's his name? Jones and Michael Jackson,
Quincy.
Quincy
Yeah,
Jones. There you go, Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson. Like you watch those videos, and yeah, they're the guys that are kind of calling the shots, right? But sometimes they're like, hey, what's that one thing that you did? Okay, keep doing that. Do that instead. So they
yeah,
would vibe off of somebody else, and I mean, there's there's something to say about that. That that perhaps that's why music was different back then, and compared to today. And that's not an insult to music today. It's just different, right? It's not like there'll be some people who live in nostalgia land and be like, hey, they don't make music like this anymore. Yeah, but the music of today is like it's different. It hits you differently, and not in a better way or worse way. It's just different. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, no doubt.
you got people like Billie Eilish and her brother recording stuff in their bedroom,
Yeah,
making
and
Grammy
they win
award
all the
winning.
Grammys.
Yeah, exactly. And so like
Woo, that's so
so
awesome.
so is that way better than doing it the way that Quincy Jones did? No, it's
Right.
just different. It's a new time in music creation, you know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's like I'm not saying that the days of multiple people coming together creating music dead by any means, but now it's more from the perspective of a single artist who has these ideas and kind of trying to make them come to life. And I don't know if that's just out of the convenience of the logistics of having people and having to pay more people or whatever, or if it's just because of computer technology and the fact that Pro Tools and Studio One and Ableton, all that stuff is ubiquitous, man. You can go anywhere, and everybody has that stuff. You know what I mean? So now everybody not only has their own say, but everybody's creating their own thing. Like there's less people, there's less barriers between an artist and the audience. You know, because back in the day, it was like, well, the barriers were like the record label, the producer, the you know what I mean. Somebody down the line could have an idea, and it'd have to make its way all the way up, and sometimes it would work, and sometimes it wouldn't. You know, but
Yeah, man.
I want to catch up on some of this. Let's see here. Um, do 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 do. Uh, Chris Rivera says, I don't know, but I actually enjoyed working with Gibby. Well, that's cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. I liked being there. I enjoyed it too. It was an awesome experience. I was too nervous for it. Like you know, um, but you
Yeah,
know,
Gilbert is very intimidating, man. I remember the first time I met him, we're talking and he's just doing this. And he's just staring, man. And I'm like,
with his red
yeah,
stick.
yeah, yeah. And I got one of those too, man. I got my black stick right here, Black Lives Matter. So he got me used to that, man, and it helps because sometimes you're too tired, so you just gotta reach for the talk back and do that. But yeah, it was very intimidating, man. But again, after a while, you get used to it and you get comfortable, man.
Yeah,
This ain't Chris Rivera, the drummer, right? This is another
yeah,
Chris Rivera.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're reading it too. I never got to record with
Yeah,
Mario.
I'm on
He goes, he don't
YouTube.
love
Yeah, yeah.
me. uh, you know what? I like the way Chris plays drums, and he's a great singer. I think he put out a single recently, right? I haven't been able to actually listen to it yet, but that's on my list of things to do. Because, you know, I know right now we live in a time where like it's weird because like nobody's playing live, and this is like the prime time for people to release content, but for
Yeah.
whatever reason, like the content's just like dripping out. So I'm gonna kind of inject here and kind of like talk about myself for a second, right? Or at least about Motivo, right? So during this whole Corona thing, we've been just wanting to play some of the songs we play live. We play covers. I mean, we have an album, but nobody requests, hey, can you play that one song off your album? No, people want to hear us play the covers, right? And you know, we're a cover band, whatever. So we started doing some of these like quarantine videos, and we had been inviting people to come and sing with us. You know,
Saw that. Yeah, that was
Mark
awesome, man.
Ledesma, excuse me, not Ray Reyna.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So uh, it's new content, but it's exclusive to YouTube. It's not anything that we intended to do to like, and like the mix isn't even great, man. Like it's just like it wasn't meant to be like studio quality, whatever. Like the drums were recording in our drummer's basement. Like it was just something for us to put out as something fun to do, right? And man,
Right.
and like internet radio stations, man, are ripping that stuff and putting it on the air like that.
Wow.
Like, and people always like in the comments, or if they ask me, hey, can you send me the audio from that? I'm like, no, bro. I'm like, that's not what it's for. It's just for you to
Yeah.
go on YouTube, watch us having some fun, dinking around, and and whatever. Like that's all it is, right? But man, like some people like people are, and not that it's good, right? It's just that people are that hungry for new content that they're just like the Ray Reina thing. Shout out going out to Ray. He did an awesome job. He always had a great voice, good set of pipes on him, man. He still sounds amazing. But come on, people. These are the same songs that he's played. These are old songs. You know what I mean? Like it's not even new, and people are reacting to it like it's new. And the same thing, like what we did with Mark. We did like a little David Lee medley, and these are all old songs that Jay sang. Like these are like 1991, 1992. Like they're old.
But you know what, brother? That's Tejano for you. Like that's just what it is. Like that's I think people just have to come to that conclusion that old school is what works for Tejano, man. It's very hard to get fans and listeners to adjust and appreciate new music because back home over here on the radio stations, that's all you hear. is
Mm.
the old stuff, and it's just the same rotation, man. Every once in a while, you'll get some of these new singles out and whatever, but
Yeah,
yeah,
but a lot of that, I
that,
mean,
that,
the quality of some of the stuff too, man, it's like it's kind of questionable that, like, just because it's new doesn't mean that it needs to be on the air. And I had a friend of mine from San Antonio. I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a DJ. And I told him, like, hey man, what's up? Back at that time, KXTN was still on FM and all this stuff. And I said, man, what's up with them playing like the same songs over and over again? He turned to me and he told me, you know what? I bet you some people don't even realize that Jay Pettis doesn't sing with David Lee anymore.
yeah, I believe it.
But I mean, but anyways, I want to get to a couple more things that people have said here, because like that's the whole point of this, is I want you guys to be able to be more part of this conversation, right? I kind of hijacked this for a second, but Random Blind Guy says, I'm super creative, so I'm never scared. I just do my thing and I have an awesome ear. Well, that's great, man. That's, keep that confidence too, because here's the thing. No matter how good one individual thinks that they are, right? No matter how good or bad you think you are, there's always going to be somebody who's better. If
Oh yeah,
you're thinking
always.
it from a technical standpoint, right? And there's always going to be somebody who's going to be critical of what you're saying. So no matter how creative you think you might be, somebody could turn around and be like, your ideas suck, and and you know what I mean. And so does that mean that your creative idea is not good? No, it just means that, like, when you're working for somebody else, like, you have to be prepared for that, for somebody to tell you. I mean, I've tried, and I know it's really hard. My wife points it out, but I wear what I want to say right on my face, and
Yeah,
like, I could, in a nice way, be like, hey, why don't we try it this way? But my face is like, that sounded not good. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And but I try not to come across as brash, because at least from my work, my perspective is that I want to make people feel encouraged to do better, right? I would prefer to tell people, hey, that was good, that was a nice attempt, but why don't we try doing this instead, as opposed to be like, no, 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 that's not good. Because then when you bring that negative sort of, like, when you if you acknowledge that somebody has failed, that brings their confidence level down, and then
Oh yeah,
in the grand scheme of things, it just deteriorates the performance, right? Nobody wants to be told that they suck, right?
yeah.
But if you try to constructively tell somebody, hey, that wasn't quite exactly whatever, but why don't you try it like this, right? And I mean, eventually, they if they get it, then good, or maybe they exceed your expectations. But as a producer, also, there has to be a time where you have to, draw the line and be like, listen, man, this isn't going to work, or whatever. And those are difficult conversations to have, at least for me. I can't speak for other people, but I hate being the guy with bad news. I hate being the one that's like, hey, listen,
Man, amen to that, bro.
you know
Yeah,
because
I feel you.
we all do this because we love doing it. And if somebody, you're giving it your all, and somebody says, no, man, you have failed, that's a punch to the gut. It's like, well, then why am I even doing this? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So if I could give any advice to anybody who is creating content with other people, do your best to try to be as constructive as you can to somebody else. And that's just my opinion. I mean, other people will, hey, there's some people who say, hey, time is money. If you're wasting my time, you got to get out of here. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
and I understand that too, but nonetheless, okay, let's see. Ray Orona says it's challenging because all the ideas come out at once. I guess that's where being disciplined comes in. Yeah, man. I mean, same thing too. Like when, I know Ray plays keyboards and drums. When you're trying to arrange a song and stuff like that, and then you start putting in a bunch of stuff, like, just because you can do it doesn't necessarily mean that you should do it, right? But
And
who?
keyword there is discipline, man. Like you have to be a disciplined player, especially in the studio.
Yep,
Because
absolutely.
yeah,
And I mean, there's some, and sometimes it's a psychological thing, because like I've met some drummers before that can play along to a drum machine, right? They have the congas pre-sequenced or whatever, right? But you put them in the studio and put a click track and say, "Hey, we're doing a ranchera or something else," and then they can't follow the click. I'm like, it's
Yep.
the same thing, but it's just their mind screwing themselves, you
Yeah.
know, where it's like, hey man, you can do it. It's just like the same thing, but some people are like, oh, I've never played with a click or whatever, you know, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Let's see here. Uh, Emmanuel J says, I was really nervous and shy working with Gilbert. He's hard to work with sometimes, but I've learned a lot from him. I enjoyed it. Absolutely. And here's the thing. Sometimes we need to go through growing pains, right? It'll sting. It'll be like when we learn how to ride a bike, you fell and scraped your knee. That shit hurts, but you learn to keep your balance because you don't want to
Yeah.
scrape your knee again, right? So the
Right.
same thing, like, hey, sometimes that tough love, man, is the quickest way to get you right on track. I think. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. No doubt. I feel
Everybody's
the same way.
personality is a little bit different, but yeah, man, we are talking a lot about Gilbert here.
I know. Right?
Yeah, let's see. Adam Brown
This
says,
interview is about you, bro.
yeah, well, I do want to get to some of these other. Okay, so let's see. I was not prepared for the Gilbert Velasquez experience. It was my first shot for really anything of that caliber. By the end of the session, I brought the discipline back home, which has helped, and that's from Adam Brown. Let's see, Emmanuel J. Motivo medley sessions are badass. Really like the DLG one with Mark. Thank you very much, Emmanuel J. Nano Fuentes says, sorry I'm late. Says, is that a new motion board I see? I think he's talking about
Oh yeah.
the new motion board
Let me
back
get
there.
that straight. Yeah, it's a weird little contraption, man. So it's a curved keyboard. It's kind of weird, man. It's designed because your wrist does this motion, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's supposed to kind of help with the action, but I honestly think it's a pain in the ass to play this thing, man. I was fortunate enough though to be an endorsee, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
with this company from Canada, and but it's pretty cool, man. You know, it's a wireless MIDI controller, and it looks cool on stage, but the action on it is it's a bit weird, man. Um, but so now that we're talking about keyboards, I wanted to chop it up with you as far as gear, man. Since this is like a keyboard show,
Absolutely.
we haven't really, yeah, we haven't really talked about any keyboards.
Yeah.
What's your take, man, as far as gear on stage? Because before it used to be, let's see how many keyboards I can put on one stand, and it's gonna look cool, and blah, blah, blah. The whole Brando Mireles thing with
Yep.
27 keyboards on stage.
Yeah,
Um,
Yanni at the
don't get me wrong,
Acropolis.
man. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's been some times where we do some big shows here in San Antonio, and I'll take the whole rig, man. The Rhodes and 3 keyboards on the side and the curved keyboard, the keytar. And do you really need all that? No.
The piano
It's
accordion.
yeah, that would, yeah, I'm saying. So like, for the keyboard player who doesn't have the whole road crew and guys helping them set up, it does get very hectic, man, carrying around gear, cases, stands, all that stuff. Or if you have a small car,
Yep.
trying to put all that in your ride, it's very hard, man. So, like, as far as for me, man, I started doing the whole, the small MIDI controllers with the laptop and stuff like that, just because it's a lot easier to carry. Don't get me wrong, like when I do these shows with Jay or the Commodores, there's like with the Commodores, there's always gear provided.
Yep.
There's always a rider, so it's a lot easier for me just to show up, plug in my ears, and let's go. With Jay, we have the road crew that sets up my Korgs and all that, the Motif and whatnot. But I think now, as far as keyboard playing, man, and sounds, I think it's moving more towards the virtual synths and virtual software and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
How do you feel, as far as
So
the gear on stage and all that.
So let me chime in on that. I'm gonna preface what I'm gonna say with a little story. So going back to my time with the Tejano Sound band, okay, like I said, they were like the band in Michigan that had the big setups and all that stuff, right? The nice light shows. So we took on a manager probably about halfway through the time that I was there. His name is was Mark Garcia. May he rest in peace. He just passed away a few months ago. I think we lost Mario. Oh no, there he is.
Yeah,
Uh,
I keep going back and forth every time I click this.
that's
Okay,
okay,
I
man.
should be good.
So Mark Garcia was our manager, and like I said, may he rest in peace. He passed away a few months ago from cancer. But when he was managing the group, he came in and he was very hands on. Like, yes, he took the bookings and stuff like that, but he was all about vision. Okay, and the one thing that he always pointed out was like, listen, when you go and see whoever Bruno Mars, or when you go and see Metallica, just arena style shows, where are all the wires at? You don't see any wires. He goes,
Yeah.
what? He goes, and if there are wires, what color are they? All the wires are black.
Hmm.
And sometimes, and no disrespect, because I understand cables can be expensive, right? But when you see bands, or even when they're sound provided, and you see the sound company show up and they have orange extension cords, or yellow, or the green lawn, extension cords, that stuff visually doesn't look very, very good.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
so to further that, being keyboard players, we have a lot of wires, man. I mean, we have about as many wires as a drummer, right? Because drummer has their overheads and all their mics and whatever, right? They have a lot of cables. So when you start getting more and more keyboards, that exponentially starts looking worse, because then it starts looking like Medusa back there, just like
Yeah,
just a
a
I
big
call it
warehouse. Yeah,
I call it spaghetti. It just looks like wires. Or when my biggest pet peeve is when somebody just unravels a little bit of a wire and then leaves the pile of wire right there, and then just like when you talk about the experience of, like, people are like, well, hey, nobody wants to pay $5-10 to go and see your local Tejano band here or whatever, but they'll spend $250 to be 30 rows back at Justin Timberlake, right?
yeah,
So why is that? Because of the experience. If you want the audience to take you seriously, you need to take yourself seriously. Because it's when
yes,
people go to see you perform, that's it. It's the word performance. It's not to hear you play. People don't say, "Oh, I'm going to go and hear those guys play." They want to see a performance, and the performance is all, like, all your senses, man. You want to feel it, you want to see it, you want to hear it. You know what I mean? It's like you have to be immersed in that sort of thing if you're going to create that sort of experience for people, at least from my opinion, right? So going back to gear and stuff like that, I have been kind of back and forth between either hardware based keyboards or soft synths with MIDI controller and a laptop. um I used to like having the MIDI controller with my laptop, and I would have one MIDI controller. The one thing that I liked about having the MIDI controller is that I would go on Amazon and find like a 25-foot USB cable that had the amplifier on it, because you can only go so far with USB before it starts acting funny, right?
hmm,
So I literally have one keyboard on the stand and one USB cable, and the USB cable could be hidden right behind the stand, where you wouldn't even it didn't even look like there was any wires coming out of it. It just And then
yeah,
there's that one line to where the laptop, and I wouldn't even have the laptop here. I had all the controls ready set up on my MIDI controller, where I already knew what buttons to press to get whatever I needed, whether it was going to be a split or brass or whatever, strings, piano, whatever. And then the laptop was off to the side because I didn't want it to, at least from what when you open up the screen, there's like this much that no matter where you put it, it's going to be blocking, where you're at. If you have it right here in front of you, nobody's going to see your face. You're going to see your hands or whatever, unless you're from the side or whatever. And no disrespect to anybody who's doing that, right? But having the laptop somewhere else off to the side, where it's, not in the frame, so to speak. Just having it off to the side, I always thought that that was kind of cool. Now, at the time, I didn't have a great laptop. It was good for that time, but I did have an experience where the laptop actually overheated and it shut down in the middle of a show. So I went back maybe like 3 4 years ago back to a hardware based keyboard, and right now I still just use one keyboard. When I first started, I would, yeah, Brando all day, set up a bunch of boards and all that stuff, right? But right now I'm using the Kronos, and the only reason that I'm using the Kronos, because when it first came out, that was supposed to be Korg's new flagship, and I tried it out and I did not like the sounds. I take that back. I didn't think the sounds fit Tejano music. I mean, we're playing old 90s tunes, right? The sounds were just too fresh for what we do, right? Yep. So I never got hip to it. That was like a lot of money to drop on a board. It really was. But then I started doing more research on it, and I saw that it supports sound fonts, which is a file format that you can make samples and on a computer, and then kind of like, not, I don't want to say the word zip, but it contains it all in one file, so you can download these sound fonts and then upload them and use them as soft synths, right? So I already had an arsenal of samples and sound fonts that I was using with a laptop, but now I load them into my Kronos, so they live in the hard drive of the keyboard.
Wow, that's dope, man.
So, like, for example, I actually have this queued up right here. So I have this. This is not even a stock sound. This is something that I downloaded from the internet. Somebody made this sound, but basically it's a DX7 and a Fender Rhodes, right? And I like that, but I was like, that still needs a little something. Something was, I mean, it sounded good. Like if you're just comping, you know what I mean? It sounds nice because when you're playing soft, get that nice dark sort of belly sort of Rhodes sort of sound. But then you could, the attack, you can get that sort of sound. But I wanted to me, I've always liked the dyno piano from the O1W.
O1W. Yep.
So what I did then is I got that sound and layered it with the O1W, but the O1W is just on the heart attack. So I don't know if you hear that. That's the O1W right there.
That's nice. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can get that sort of like, it's like the best of both worlds, because if I'm trying to do like the same thing playing but with Rhodes, it's not the same sound. You know what I mean? It's like
right.
It's too vintage for 90s Tejano, at least in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
There's plenty of guys who are doing that, right? But if you can blend in some of that warmness from the Rhodes sound and a little bit of that DX7, but also have like a little bit of that O1W, that's like, to me, that's almost like the perfect combination. The only thing that I would use aside of that, and I know that you have one, would be an MKS.
Yeah.
But
I love that thing, man.
Yeah, man, and because I mean, it just has a real gospely sort of sound. What's that guy? Jamal Hartwell, right?
Oh yeah.
He has like the VST version of it, right? Have you ever considered maybe getting that, or I don't know, maybe you do have that, so you can have that live on the road?
I got the app. There was an app on for the iPad from one of the musicians at the church. He turned me on to it, but I never used it, man. I have the rack mount, so I would take that in a little case and just MIDI it to one of the keys.
So you take it on the road then?
I have the legit one, man, but it actually belonged to I forget his name, man. It was one of the old keyboard players for George Strait. Gilbert bought one and I bought one too at the same time. Mm-hmm. But that thing sounds so amazing, man. It's real authentic. But now I'm using that, what is it? Audio Lounge, the Rose Affair. I don't know if you're hip to that.
No, I haven't. I
You
haven't
need to
got.
check that out, bro. That's like that's that Luis Miguel patch. You know what I'm saying? It's
Oh
got like
yeah.
you said, a little bit of yeah, a little bit of both worlds there, man. It sounds so sweet. It's got like that O1, but the DX7 tine, and it
Hmm.
just cuts through so nice, man.
Yeah, and it's good to have a sound that you can cut through with velocity because you don't want a sound like that was one of my complaints about like the Triton piano, like the EP.
Yeah,
It was bright, but it was bright all the time. You
it
couldn't.
was, yes.
It was a cling,
Yep.
cling, cling. Like no matter
Yeah,
how expressive you tried to be, it was like cling or cling.
yeah,
Like it was
yeah,
just bright or brighter. There was no
right.
like. Hold on here. Let me catch up with a couple of these things. Marcus Daniels, y algo suave, tough Diggler says, "What's up?" And let's see here. Ray Orona says VSTs are amazing. The key bed feels. Wait, what? The key
Keep it
bed
feel is always the
feels
struggle.
is always the struggle. Yes. Uh, that's where the money is spent on the chronos, the montage, etc. In my opinion, keep your gig to a minimum now these days is super important. Yes, especially if you're setting up your own stuff. It says same thing with drummers, 30 cymbals uh, versus the one with five. Okay, and then it's let's see here. Nano Fuentes says I fell in love with the Roland Cloud. The JV 1080 brass is sick. Yeah, Roland had some really good brass sounds. As a matter of fact, I have a sound font of one of the XP brasses, and that's what I use because I've always wanted to get the Jerry brass, the ASR 10, the Insonic brass, and nobody that I know has one. And if they do have it,
So,
they're not parting
if,
ways with it. So, or
so
at
on that
least,
note, I had a conversation with another keyboard player. I don't know if you're familiar with Omar
yeah,
Ortiz.
yeah, yeah. From Dallas, plays with
Yeah,
uh Barron
the
band,
Joe B band.
Joe
Yeah,
B
yeah, yeah,
Barron
yeah.
band. Yeah.
So we had this chat a long time ago, man, because he had um I had asked him a few times to sit in, for
Mm-hmm.
some shows,
Mm-hmm.
and hold on, okay, my battery's getting low. Anyways, one time, this was before the Chronos came out and all that, man. I think
Mm-hmm.
we were actually in Dallas, and Joby's band was opening up for a show, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he still had the floppies, man, that Jerry turned them on to. So he loaded them up on the O1W.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "Look, man, check it out. I have the Mrs. Jones background voices. I have, whatever, all these samples." And then he has the brass that Jerry used on these recordings. So about a month ago, we were talking, man, and I had asked him. I said, "Hey, so how do I get those samples from you, man? And where's that? I've been looking for that ASR brass, dude." And he's like, "Well, it's not actually ASR brass, dude. It's that Insonic keyboard, but it's mixed with like a pop brass from one of the Korgs and another brass from another keyboard." So I guess Jerry had created that patch
Mm-hmm.
and kept it on the floppy, but the word was always that it was that Insonic ASR brass and whatever, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why everybody was always like, "Yeah, I need to get that sound, man." So at the end of the day, Jerry wound up creating that patch.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still trying to get it.
I was gonna say,
I tried.
listen, I barked up that tree already. I was like, "Come on, Omar, come on, mochate, man, come
Yeah,
on." He's like, "Oh, I think the disc is corrupted, or I can't. I have to. My keyboard is in the
yeah,
shop, or all right, man, I got it, Okay."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Let's see. Roy Maya says, speaking of Rhodes and DX7, are Tejano keyboard players still using, or are they using Rhodes Affair VST? And you were just talking about that. That's my favorite electric piano for Robbie Butchman sound. For the Robbie Butchman sound.
Buchanan, Buchanan.
You, Buchanan, maybe. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, Buchanan. Let's see. I used the Phantom 7 to trigger the Rhodes Affair. Overkill, but I love it. LOL. And let's see. Man, everybody's talking about this Rhodes Affair. Do you have it there? Do you have it like
Man,
kind of set up?
let me see. I just don't have my MIDI controller, man.
Do you have something that's like like recorded that I could hear what it sounds like? Like if you want to
Let me see.
solo out something that
Let me see what I got here, bro. Let me
uh
load up Pro Tools real quick while you answer another
yeah.
question.
Yeah, okay. Let's see here. Nano Fuentes says, doesn't Michael have it? Michael said that he had it. I'm not sure if he still has it. In reference to the floppy disks with the man. And let me tell you something. We're gonna talk here about that Jerry Brass here in a second. Anna Brown says the Rhodes Affair is really nice. I recently got it for the Mo DX7. Beautiful sound. I have the MKS Sensation for Contact as well. Love them both. Bobby Castañeda says I also have the MKS 20, which I layer with the Korg Road sound. Love it. So yes, we're hearing a lot of MKSs, DX7s, O1Ws. So last week we did the Jerry thing, where we talked a little bit about him. And I my initial idea was to have Chente talk more about like the personal side of Jerry and like what it was like being on the road with him, and then having Gilbert talk more about working with Jerry and all that stuff. And so the conversation of Jerry Brass came up, and I said, the legend is, and everybody has like a slight variation on it, but I heard like kind of like how you said it's a little bit ASR pop brass layered with a sample of Val Malto's sax.
Really?
That's what I had heard. But like I said, this is all hearsay, right? So when I brought
Yeah.
it up, Gilbert said, "No, no, 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 no. Those guys don't know what they're talking about. It was just the ASR brass. So that Jerry had that keyboard and that was the sound." He goes, "I was there." So here's another. I don't know. There's a bunch of different. This is like a myth. It's like, have you ever seen that show where the people are like on what is that that one island, Oak Island, where they're like digging for like this treasure that might not even be there, and the whole place is like
Oh yeah,
booby
I know what
trapped
you're
and
talking about.
stuff, and like it's like a legend, right? Like who knows if
Yeah.
there's anything at the bottom of it, right? I feel
Right.
like my quest to find this Jerry Brass has been like that. Like no matter when I find like a little like when I find a lead of somebody's like, hey, so and so might have it. I'm like, okay, hey, can you hook a brother up? Oh, well, I don't
Yeah.
have this or da 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 da. And then it's like, oh, well, this guy, well, and then when you try to replicate it yourself, it's like, well, I heard that it was this layered with that, and somebody's like, no, 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 it was definitely this layered with that. And they're like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, wasn't it layered with Val's sax sample? And you're like, no, was it? I'm like, man. So
Just forget.
so more the school of thought, more people are saying that it's ASR 10 with something else. It's not just a straight ASR 10. That's at least what most people are saying. What
Right.
the other thing is, I that's still yet to be determined. But
Yeah, I forgot the keyboard. Because according to Omar, he said he was at Blue Cat Studios
which makes
when
sense.
Jerry, yeah, when Jerry, you know,
Was there? Yeah.
was there and made the patch and sampled this and sampled that. So he was showing him, you know, the the, the formula, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to bring up this Rhodes Affair and see if I have something here that'll play. Um, and this thing is real cool, man. Let's see. The thing is, it takes up a lot of CPU, man.
Yeah.
So sometimes you get these little bugs. Yeah. So I don't know if you can hear that, man. 'Cause
Yeah, I
I
can
got the
hear it.
laptop
I
on.
I can hear the attack. It already sounds like yeah.
Let me turn the interview down because But this is what it is, man. See if I can move the phone here. I don't know if you can make that out, dude, but that's the virtual synth.
Okay.
It's just a plugin,
Yeah.
and the only options you have is just gain, reverb, lows, and highs, and that's it.
That's a good interface, man. That's all you need. If it sounds good, then
That's
it
all
is
you.
good.
Yeah, and so see if I can play. I don't know if you can make that out. Let's see. That's the virtual synth. Just a plugin. Yeah. I was picking up the interview, but
It's all good.
it cuts through really nice, man. And
Yeah.
when you're doing these ballads, these real romantic, Luis Miguelish type of ballads,
Dude, or
this
even
piano is
rancheras,
just
man.
so
Like
amazing.
all day on rancheras, man. That's
Oh yeah,
yeah, man.
yeah, and
That's
and it's going back to what you were saying about like the Triton electric pianos, man. Like there's this one patch I used to use called, I think it was called Silk Digi electric piano. Um, I want to say it was Bank D 113, if I recall. Um, that one was a patch that I just stayed with for so many years, man. But it would get lost in the mix.
mm-hmm.
Um, and then you would try to add another patch and just kind of layer it. It's just very hard, man, depending on the song, I guess, and the velocity, right? How hard you play, and um, a lot of those patches are real thin, man, and then there's those patches that are too warm that they just get buried. They just get lost in the mix. So
And that's why
this patch right here. No, go ahead, go ahead.
no, that's what I was gonna say. That's why it's good to have a patch that is super like sensitive to velocity, um because um you can as a keyboard player express how like where you want the brightness to come from, right? Like so let me load up one of my patches real quick that like um okay, so this is what I would use for like Amor de Madrugada, right? Right. Oops. Whatever, right? You see how I'm,
Right,
I'm playing hard and I can get that bright sound. And then what I'll do, oh, somebody's calling me. Doesn't matter. So, but then I can use that same sound to just play really expressively. Then if I want to, see, you know what I mean. So
right.
you can, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
See, if you want to bring it down right there. If you want to play it harder, then right there you can get that bright, so it cuts through, so you can be as expressive as you want. And I think that in itself, that's what makes the MKS such a great sounding instrument. And I think even Jamal Hartwell was talking about it, that like that's the one thing that even like the acoustic pianos, they don't sound real, but they sound real because they're so expressive. Like you can
Yeah.
play softly and then hit the attack and then it like comes out, and that's how you would
Right.
really play a piano, you know what I mean? Like it's one thing to get a sample and then just make it louder or quieter depending on how hard you hit it, right? But
Yeah.
that's not how instruments play, man. Like
Right.
the tone changes, not just the velocity, like the volume. With the velocity, the tones change, you know what I mean? And
No doubt.
I think that's very important to have, especially, and now the technology is actually getting there where you can do that. The technology in the Triton, I mean, the Triton had good sounds, right? And I'm not knocking it. I still have an LE that I use for small gigs when I don't want to take this, right? But um, like you said, it's either too thin or it's too bass heavy, It's like
Yeah,
the Metallica EQ. It's like lows and highs and nothing in the middle. But if
yeah,
but by you being able to play expressively, with your fingers, you know what I mean. You creating the brightness or the dark here, right, instead of like in the patch. You know what I mean.
exactly, bro. You're right. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Let's see. Nano Fuentes says Korg EP or Yamaha EP. Hmm.
My opinion, Yamaha, bro.
Yeah.
Uh, just the EPs and the acoustic pianos.
Yep.
I think they have a better tone, better feel. Even the keys itself, man, the way they're weighted.
Mm-hmm.
The Yamahas, to me, they've always had a better feel, man. So like, it's like you say, the way you play is how your sound's gonna come out.
Mm.
And I think the Yamahas express that a little better. But I've always been the fan of the Korgs. So
Mm-hmm. I think I
yeah,
this is what I think. I think if you're looking for like a general like one keyboard that does everything, I would direct people towards a Korg. But
yeah, no doubt.
if you're looking for something that's real specific, like hey, I want to have like a monster, piano sound or whatever, then of course, yeah, Yamaha. But on the other side of that is like, well, look at the MKS is rolling, right? I've heard some Kurzweil pianos that sound great too.
Yeah,
And not to say that Korg's not in that same arena of piano sounds, right? But um, I think, at least from my perspective, right, my keyboard rig has always been a matter of convenience, right? Like because if I really wanted, like you said, I would have a Yamaha for piano and such and such, or maybe a VST for strings. Do like Hollywood strings or whatever, and then do
yeah.
whatever
That's
chord.
another great virtual synth, man. I love those Hollywood strings and the Steinway pianos that come with it, man. It's yeah. I don't know if you mess with the pianos, but
I haven't. I still need to get. You know what? I need to get better string sounds. Hey, I want to tell you guys. I want to tell you guys a story. Because and it involves both me and Mario. And I have no shame in sharing this. Okay. But this just to me, it was just such um an honor, right? To here, I'll just tell you what it is. So there was a mutual client of ours. Uh, we got paid. I don't know if you knew this on your end, Mario, but so and I think you'll know. I think you know who I'm talking about, or maybe you will after the story. So we both got hired to do strings for a song, and basically we both I got paid, and I'm sure you got paid. So it doesn't really matter. It was work, right? But at the
yeah,
end of the day, they the client that the our client had another client, and he had to make the final call which strings they were going to use, and they ended up going with yours, right? And it was really kind of like a tiebreaker there, and I don't say that like in a competitive way or anything like that, but the fact that I was even considered to be in the doing the same job that you got called to do. But the one thing that the criticism that I did get, and I kind of knew it going right into it, was that my string sounds did not sound as realistic as what you had provided. So they ended up going the route with you. And so like then I kind of think to myself like, man, what if I little things like that, about sounds and stuff. It's like, hey, would the client of like might take a little bit better if I would have had different string samples or whatever, you know what I mean? But nonetheless, it was super cool to be able to like at least be in the top whatever of their choices of string arrangements and stuff like that. So I was geeked either way. I was like, because I mean, you guys, I love doing this show and I love talking shop with all these guys, right? And you guys have heard me harp about this over and over and over again. To me, music is not a competition, right? It's to me, it's just a way of expressing yourself. Like, yes, ultimately at the end of the day, because sometimes there's money involved or whatever, it is a business, and there is, I guess, to a certain extent, because we live in a capitalistic society. there is inherently some kind of competition, right? But as far as from the creative side of it, I try not to think that way. I try to think of like I'm expressing myself one way, this person's expressing themselves another way, and I can appreciate how that person's expressing themselves because they're doing it differently than what I'm doing, right? So in no way do I ever think of myself to be on the same, and I don't like using the word, but level or whatever as some of the people or anybody that I'm interviewing on these shows, right? But the fact that I get to rub elbows with some of these people have been legendary keyboardists that have, created all the songs that we love, you know what I mean? Uh, to be able to just rub elbows with you guys, you know what I mean? To me is just it's such an honor. And I don't know. I like playing music. I try to emulate what some of you guys do and whatever. I'm nobody here, but I don't know. I think this is so cool just to be able to hang out with Mario Ortiz, hang out with, Hector, Gutierrez, everybody who's been on the show, Chris Rodriguez. All these guys are just monster keyboard players, man. And for me to just be able to ask them questions or, whatever, it's just, I don't know. I feel like a kid in a candy store, man. I really do.
Yeah, bro. And I just want to say thank you, man. What you're doing is awesome, bro. Especially coming from, another keyboard player, man. It's so cool that now people can kind of see what we're up to, what we do, what we're about, and it's cool to interact with everybody on here and try to answer whatever questions and tell our stories and whatnot. I mean, we could be here all night, man, talking about all kinds of stuff.
Or play a bunch of
But
stuff, but yeah.
yeah, I'm saying, man.
Mhm.
But I want to say thank you, man, and I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. Um, Keep it going, brother. Just keep it going, man, and may God bless you with many more, man. And,
I
and
appreciate that.
yeah, brother, just keep it going, man. Especially right now that we're going through these hard times. This is probably like one of the only ways that we can communicate with each other, man.
Hmm.
So it's cool to just be able to vibe and still communicate and again, man, just share our keyboard stories, man, and our little tips or tricks or whatever, and yeah, it's a blessing, man, to be able to be a keyboard player and play on stage with these great bands and be able to produce music and stuff like that. So to all keyboard players out, all musicians, man, just keep it going. Don't give up. These this time is eventually gonna end. This whole pandemic thing, man. It's gonna come to an end soon. We hope.
Hmm.
I know there's a lot of musicians right now that are thinking like, man, I need to get a job, or I need to figure out what I'm gonna do. I need a plan B, C, D, everything. Um, and I get it. I mean, it's hard to rely on these government checks or whatever, or even if you're still trying to get some of that money, right? I mean, because like for me, man, I'm 24/7 musician, bro. So we're taking a huge hit here, man. It's been really hard, man.
Hmm.
Um, but we're blessed. We're still here. We're still trying to work. Um, so just to all the musicians out there, man, keep your head up. It'll be over soon, man, and we're gonna hopefully get back to touring and making music and making people happy here, man. So again, Rolando, thank you, brother, for doing stuff like this, man, for having your show and having us on here, man. It's an honor, it's a privilege, bro, to be able to talk shop, and it's fun, man.
Yeah.
It's real fun, dude.
And I want to, because I know we've been talking for a long time now.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
do want to wrap this up, but I want to first of all, before I sign off, I want to thank Mario uh, for doing this reverse interview here and allowing me to talk a little bit about myself, but allowing us also to bring up questions to ask everybody else who's watching this. And if you're watching this, later on YouTube after that we're live. Be sure to keep answering some of these questions. I don't know. You guys let me know. Do you guys like this reverse interview thing where we start asking questions to you guys? I mean, obviously, we wouldn't do this if it was somebody who's been on the show for the first time, right? But Mario's been on the show once before. He got to talk about himself and what he does, and and hey, we might have Mario on again down the road again. You know what I mean? I love talking with you, brother. It's always fun. But if you guys like these reverse interviews, be sure to comment down there and let us know if you guys want to keep doing this. If you guys want me to just shut up and just ask the questions, that's fine too. You can be sure to let me know about that. But I do want to say that it's extremely flattering that 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 you considered doing this. You know, you're like, hey, Rolando, I want to talk about your story. That to me, like, I think I even told you something to the effect like, man, you made my whole day, right? And I also want to send a shout out to because there was one other person who had the same idea, but I turned them down initially, and I think that whatever. But and that's Chris Rodriguez, because Chris Rodriguez was the first guy who did the show with me, and he was the first guy to help me put a list together of guys to ask to do this show. So shout out to Chris, and I want if we're gonna do if anything, if we're gonna do any more of these reverse interview sort of things, even if we have to do one more, I got to get Chris on here because he approached me about it too, and so, but that's
Awesome.
not because of me, right? I just want to be able to have their input and your input, and so whoever's watching, these questions, are they helpful? Do you guys want to contribute? Be sure to comment about those sort of things so we can see what direction we want to take this show, because eventually there's only so many keyboard players to talk to, right? So if we want to bring it back on and ask questions in reverse, if you guys like that format, then maybe we can start sneaking those in every once in a while. Otherwise, Mario, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. And everybody who had questions or answered questions, thank you so much for joining us. I've been doing this every week, and next week my wife took a whole week off. So guess what? I'm taking a whole week off too.
There you go. There you
Next
go.
week there's no interview. So enjoy your Tuesdays or your next Tuesday without us here. The following week, we're gonna have John Ortiz, who was in the chat. Shout out going out to him. He's a keyboard player out of Holland, Michigan, or Benville, Michigan. Plays with the band Charisma. So a local cat is gonna be on here sharing his story and talking about his whole Midwest Chicano Tejano sort of thing, and I think those are important stories to tell too. So again, Mario, if you want to hang tight for a second, otherwise we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Thank you very much, and until next time.